Joining us on this episode is Ulices Del Toro. Ulices is an Emmy-winning videographer and photographer based in Southern California, focusing on having a diversified business that allows him to not only make a career out of his passion, but doing so in a way that allows him to support his life, family, and creativity with a sustainable approach. I'm Kyle Wilson, and this is The Photographer's Problem. So what are you working on lately? I feel like we don't really talk about work stuff because we end up just talking about narrative stuff, but like what's work like lately? What's the photo world for Del Toro?
Well, the last couple years, I mean, as you know, I'm editor for narrative.
Yeah.
My day job is a multimedia specialist. I work as a videographer and an editor, and I've been doing that for the last, I want to say, 4 or so years. So yeah.
And what does that look like exactly? Like explain like in 5. Like who are you working for and like what are you making on the regular?
So I work for a software company called Esri. It's kind of hard to explain what they do. They have a software and it has to do with mapping. The easiest way that most people say is we make maps, or we work in map making. But yeah, I work on the educational side. We provide educational services for our users. And I work on a very small media team where we have a graphic designer, someone that does UI, and then myself. And then we have an additional person we're adding right now to help us do like some more motion graphics. And so yeah, I've been there for almost 2 years now. So it's my day job, but it's my day job where I get to go and do what I love to do. I'm behind the camera.
You still get to make stuff.
Yeah, I still get to make stuff. I'm editing. I'm on a creative team. All we do is like nerd over Adobe, Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere. That's like all day long. So that's my day job. I still shoot weddings. They're becoming less and less. Not necessarily on purpose, but I feel like I'm like I was up here, these were weddings, and my career has slowly like just kind of been evening out,
Yeah.
I love shooting weddings.
And is that driven by the desire for like consistency because family, kids, all that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've noticed that as our kids get older and the more activities they're doing, you want to spend more time with them on the weekends. There's more, games happening on the weekends. There's more activities that we want to do. So I don't say no to work, but I think I'm like advertising less, like I don't do paid ads anymore. My posting is pretty awful. I post maybe once or twice a month. But I've been doing it long enough that I still get inquiries for weddings, and the ones that come in, I try to take them on. But like I said, the more I go into the video side, the less weddings that are slowly starting to come in, and I'm kind of like okay with that now.
Yeah, I mean, I think being a video content producer for a company or for yourself is equally as valuable. Like I'm a content producer technically of some sorts for a different company, for a corporate structure that's not my own, like quote unquote freelance or self-employed. But I think finding any means or method to be able to pay your rent and or mortgage and life while still getting to make stuff is its own like adventure. Like I think there's a ton of photographers or videographers either or that within this career they might see working for a boss or an entity as like a negative, but I think it's just another piece of the industry in its entirety.
Yeah, honestly, it was something that I always like kind of planned on doing. I just never knew exactly what that looked like. I also had that fear of like working a 9 to 5, being in a cubicle, having a boss, all the things that you hear about those jobs. And then, my job before this, it was in government, and it was a job that really felt like all the things that they make fun of in The Office, like the water cooler talk and, the things that people complain about, like it was all kind of there. But I managed to find a team, a boss, a job where it didn't feel like that. I never felt like I was drowning. I never felt like I was waiting for the clock to hit 5 to clock out or anything like that, because, I found a job kind of doing what I love to do, right? So I think that's where people, artists, it's kind of scary going into a job where you have all those things, but if if it's something, it's like they say, like if you do what you love to do, you never work a day in your life. And it's kind of the same with this. Like, yeah, I have limitations to my creativity because I have to create for whatever company that I'm working for. But even when you do that for yourself, you kind of have those same limitations depending on what you're shooting for. If you're doing like a brand shoot or something, you have to shoot for the brand, right? They hire you for your art, but you still have certain limitations. So I think it's kind of the same thing, um, working a 9 to 5 in a creative job.
Yeah. Has there been things when you were transitioning from that, like that you found to be like unexpected hurdles? Like I know when I started at narrative, I kind of ran into this bit of imposter syndrome, which I'd never really experienced before, just because I wasn't certain that I was doing enough or the right amount or that I should be all of myself or things like that. So as you like stepped away from, or not stepped away, but transitioned to a different thing where it wasn't strictly all your baby, was there anything unexpected, like left turns that came up? You're like, oh, I didn't know this was going to be part of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we all struggle with imposter syndrome, right? I think when I learned
Yeah.
that, like almost every artist struggles with that. At least we were able to kind of relate with each other with that. But yeah, I still struggle with that especially with my coworkers now. They're so talented and so good at what they do. When I go next door to, one of my coworkers, he's our graphic designer. He's like 3D modeling, and I go over there and just watch him for an hour doing 3D stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, I'm never going to be at this level. So I think we all struggle with that. But I don't know. I guess the most surprising part was, climbing career wise. I feel like it's a little different when you're doing it on your own. All the pressures of finances and getting more jobs and getting, advertising and all those things fall on you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but as I was climbing career wise, once I started working in the corporate world, um, I was surprised how it's less, it feels like less pressure, but then you also, I don't know, it feels like the climb kind of takes longer, like um,
Yeah.
I feel like I climbed up pretty quick, from position to position, but at the same time, you're like, okay, I want to move up. I already want to be, have the next title and move up to the next, pay rate. But I've only been in this position for 3 weeks. So I kind of have to wait it out. Whereas,
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
wedding photographer, you're like, I want to make more money now. I'm going to change my prices now.
Yeah.
It feels like it's a little easier to do that.
Everything's a little, that was a surprise to me too. Like not only that everything was a little slower, like the way I phrased it was, in my own wedding career, if I want to do something on a Monday, I just make that thing happen on Tuesday.
Yep.
Whereas here it's like, hey, I want to make this thing happen on Monday and we'll see if we can get to it in a couple of weeks, or maybe
Yeah.
by the time it actually starts to take place, because I'm not pulling all of the every single lever. Like there were so many things in this job where I would run into, hey, well, this needs to get taken care of. I assume that's going to fall on me, but there's a person for that.
Yeah.
Whereas in our own business, it's always like, hey, you're going to have to wear all 17 hats right now. It's all on you.
Yeah.
And that means the pacing can be at your pace, but it's also, stressful and sometimes
Yeah,
overwhelming.
it's pros and cons, but you just have to be a little patient. I guess that's all. And to me, the pros outweigh the cons. So
Yeah. You've been kind of like splitting between not two careers, but two versions of a career. But throughout either, has there been a really big proud moment from either camp of your employment or creative field that's felt like, oh, I did that, like I made that happen, and it's like huge for you?
yeah, I mean, I've had a ton of proud moments. Every time I move a couple years in my career and kind of look back and see where I'm at now, where I've come from, I was always worried about longevity as a photographer. As I'm sure you've struggled with it before too. Like, how long can I keep doing weddings? How long can I be being a photographer? How long can I keep getting paid just to make art? You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
the expiration date.
Exactly. So that's always a thing that was looming, and so it was always in the back of my head. What other ways I can move into career, because I came into my career as a photographer, but I've always done a lot more than that. I've always been a creator. I went to school for film, so I started as a videographer. I like to paint and make art. I just like creating stuff. So I was always looking at different ways to advance in my career than other than just photography. So um, I think looking back now at everything that I've done and how I got to where I am today, where I'm a wedding photographer. I work for a company as a multimedia specialist. I shoot videos for small businesses, and I do campaign work. I'm really proud that I've been able to make that a career, and I'm comfortable now knowing that it has longevity. Like I know the work that it takes to continue to get more jobs, but I'm no longer really worried about getting more jobs.
Yeah,
They'll keep coming. So I'm proud of
yeah.
that. And then, but if I had to pick one thing that I'm super proud of, last year I unexpectedly became an Emmy Award winner, which I told you about
Oh
already.
yeah, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, so that was super unexpected. Um, I used to work for Riverside County, and they created a fentanyl awareness campaign, and they took all the creatives from all the different departments to help create this campaign. And I helped direct and edit the first PSA for the campaign. And like I said, it was unexpected. The executives from the county, they submitted that for an Emmy amongst
Mm.
other awards, and they won a ton of awards. They became an Emmy nominee, and yeah, we went to the Emmys and we won it. We took it.
That's so crazy, and it's
Yeah,
like the best kind of thing to be proud of because you didn't plan for it. It's not like you woke up as a videographer and you said, "Hey, I'm gonna get an EGOT, I'm gonna get an Emmy," and make that plan. But like to have that surprise, that's
yeah,
incredible. It's huge.
yeah. It was a very proud moment. Now I have this strange trophy sitting in my house that I never thought I'd
Oh my
have.
gosh, I yeah. Once we started talking about that, when you told me a couple weeks ago, I was thinking about it like, what would it would just be so figuratively placed in my house, and it's got to be such a funny conversation piece when like a new person comes over and they're like doing the thing, they're looking around, checking your magnets on your fridge, and they're like, "Oh, is this? Do you have an Emmy? What do you have an Emmy for? Oh, you have an Emmy? That's
Like,
crazy."
is this real? I'm like, yeah, that's real.
Yeah, it's so cool. Um, yeah, that's such a wild like turn of events for you to have happen while
It
getting
was.
to do the thing that you like to do, which is
Yes. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the
Do
the
you?
PSA itself, I'm like super proud of, because we put a ton of work into the campaign, and that's what made it so great too. Like the campaign that we worked on for fentanyl awareness just meant so much to everybody.
Yeah,
You can find the PSA. It's facesoffentanyl.net. It sits right on the front, and the whole campaign, we created it to just spread more awareness and more resources about fentanyl. And I feel like the accolades, the awards that were won because of it, just help spread the word even more. So I think it's a good thing.
yeah, that's so rad. Do you have any like inclination as to what you want to be doing? Like, not the like where do you see yourself in 5 years, but right now you're working for this company making the projects that you're doing now and shooting a little bit less weddings for yourself. Do you have some concept of where you hope that this is going to continue to go or what it's going to grow into? Do you foresee yourself having your own production company of some sorts, or adding more of that or anything like that?
I think that I have found my path, especially with this company I'm at now. Um, that's kind of where I was headed. I wanted to be able to work for a company where I can, put money into a retirement plan and save. But like I said, at the same time, enjoy, creating and being a creator, and working for a company that supports that. And I have definitely found that now. So I don't see that changing. Maybe working for another company, that's never out of, that could always happen too. But I'm happy where that's at, and I'm able to make changes there, make plans there that I want to fulfill career wise, while simultaneously also doing that on the side for myself. Like I said, I do a lot of campaign work, commercials for small businesses, and I love all that stuff. So I don't see myself stopping from doing that anytime soon. And I'm always trying to make new connections, just to see what the next project leads. And the older I get, the more focused I am on the specific career paths that I've chosen. I'm able to choose projects that are passion projects, right? But that I get
Yeah.
paid well for them as well. So
Yeah, which I think
yeah,
is like the ultimate luxury to be able to do the things that are not so much risky, but not necessarily always known as lucrative. But then you
yeah,
also still get to make sure you supply or provide for your family, invest in
mm-hmm.
retirement things. I think the wedding photography industry is really interesting because so many people just see like, oh, I'm going to shoot this wedding for $5,000 or something like that. And when you actually like subtract all the cost, overhead, expenses, taxes, investments, retirement, etc., it's you really really have to work quite a bit,
Yeah,
and there is like that built-in expiration date to it. And I know just from my experience transitioning into more of a role where there's consistency, like it's been really nice to not have that 2 or 3 months every winter where I'm freaking out. Like, are
yeah,
people going to find me on the internet and like my work enough to hire me so that I can pay
yeah,
rent and order pizza? Like,
mm-hmm.
that is no longer a worry. And I still get to feel really confident in my role. Like, I know what I'm doing, which is nice because
Yeah,
I've had jobs in the past where I was like, I don't even know what I am. I don't know anything here. So I just feel silly and dumb all the time. And so,
yeah. Yeah, I really
you've
don't know what
obviously,
what it looks like, what the future looks like. I don't have big plans. I just know that I'm going to keep doing what I've done for the last 10 years, is just keep learning, keep growing, keep making connections. I mean, all the connections I've made led me to a job like like this, like working with narrative and doing video editing for you guys. I would have never found that if I didn't keep following all these different paths that I liked. And even with you guys, like I just kind of brought it up on a whim, about like, hey, if you guys ever
yeah.
need an editor, and then here we are. So
Oh man, I'm so glad it worked out that way too. Obviously, you've made like there's been a ton of good steps and missteps along the way to kind of get to where you're at now. You're a pretty, I'll call you without calling you old. You're a seasoned professional.
okay.
And what? I mean, you're really old, Ulysses.
You can
Established.
count you can count the seasons right here on my
Yeah. What's the? You're distinguished. Along the way, like what was the big mess up? Like what was the thing in your career that you're like, oh yeah, I really fucked that up. That did not go as the way I should have thought it would.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've had
You're
too many.
infallible. Okay.
No, no. I haven't had any crazy bad decisions that like I feel like ruined anything, like anything crazy. I don't think. But I did think about this, and in the beginning, I know they say the equipment doesn't matter, but one of the mistakes I feel like I made early on was I was really young, I had no money, and the way I was able to buy like my first camera to start my business and start doing this, to make money out of it. I was in a class action settlement and I got a big check. And I did some research and asked some friends, and I think people gave me some okay advice, but uh, I ended up buying, which wasn't a bad camera, but I ended up buying a Canon 50D. It was a crop sensor camera, and I always wish I had spent the little extra money just to get. I think at the time it was a 5D Mark II, right?
Too. Yeah.
And the reason I feel like that was such a big mistake is because that camera served me well, and it jump started my career and I took great photos with it. But after that, I was always kind of chasing that 5D Mark II or when the Mark III came out, and I was broke and I never could make like enough money to just go out and buy it. So I rented a lot and I slowly spent money on cameras slightly better than mine until I got to it. And I always wish that if I had just put the money down on the one camera that I know would have, I mean, up until what, like 2 3 years ago, I still knew some photographers that still had a 5D2 in
Yeah.
their bag, like the thing
I
lasted
feel like
over 10 years.
I still feel like I know a current, like I think, and I could get corrected on this. I think Jordan Voth still shoots with a 5D2. I still think that's his game. I know
it's a
that
great
like
camera.
I shot my first year of weddings with a Canon 20D, a nifty 50, and like a 28 to 135 f2 5 or
Hmm.
f4 to 5.6 or something. Some real trash equipment. And I shot the first year of weddings that were like these. They were like $1,200 weddings. I was shooting for a
Yeah.
DJ company, and they were splitting at 400, 400, 400. So I was shooting these $400 weddings basically, and I saved all year to get, because some photographer on some blog somewhere said get a full frame camera and get an L series lens. So I saved just to get
Hmm.
a 5D Mark II and a
Yeah.
35 1.4. Like that was the whole year's worth of goals. And
Yeah.
that 5D2 ran all the way up until I switched over to Nikon. Like it, and there's such a good body, but so is the 50D.
Yeah.
So I
So
think in scope of
it wasn't a huge thing. I
oh
mean, but
yeah
like I said, it was like it's the one thing I was like always chasing, and I didn't,
yeah
and I didn't have to. I could have just had it right from the get go. Like I said, like they say that it's not about the equipment, but if I
yeah
had that camera, I wouldn't have been chasing after it the
yeah.
whole time.
In terms of mistakes, it's a pretty low stakes one, which is pretty good.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think I've made. I'm pretty fortunate. I don't think I've made too many grave mistakes that have caused me any any heartbreak in my career or anything
Yeah.
like that.
What about
I
good
what
stuff? What's like been the best decision you've made in your career?
um best decision I've made, probably diversifying my business, because
Yeah.
I kind of chose I initially I chose wedding photography because I knew that there was money in it. I started back in 2009, and I just kind of wanted to the place I was working at, I just really wasn't making anything. So I needed something that would actually help me supplement my income, while I continued my career or whatever. Um, and so weddings did that for me. But like I said before, photography wasn't the only thing I was into. I went to film school. I wanted to be a videographer. I wanted to create things. And, when I graduated college, content creator wasn't a thing, but I think
Mm-mm.
that's kind of what I was chasing. I just didn't know that's what I was chasing. So the fact that I took the time to, come back to videography, maybe like about five, 5 or 6 years ago, I started shooting wedding films. I started introduce video into my weddings, and that kind of brought me back to video. I ended up not liking doing wedding videography as much, but it definitely got me some other work where I started shooting for businesses, people that just needed content, and that's where I found my lane for my videography work. Um, and now, even now as a videographer or multimedia specialist, like I'm finding that I really enjoy video editing, which is not something that I would have said, 2, 3 years ago. I knew how to edit videos, but it wasn't something I was like passionate about, and now I'm like going to summits and going to Adobe Max and taking classes on just video editing so that I can, learn more and become a better videographer. So diversifying my business, I really feel like help um, help pave the way for my career.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's huge. I definitely wish I wasn't against video back in the day, but I think like when I think in the same way that like my taste was so photo focused
Mm-hmm.
that I knew what good video looked like. Good video looked like things I went and saw in the movies. And at the time I was shooting the photos that I was shooting with very little knowledge were so much better to me, and their outcomes were so much better to me than the videographers I was surrounded with at
Mm-hmm.
the time. And so I just thought, I don't want to do that. It seems labor intensive and expensive and a whole other thing. But I definitely wish if I could go back now, because now it feels like I'm too deep in the trenches. I am a now I am an orchestra symphony cellist, and I just don't want to take the time to go back and learn the kazoo. Like
Yeah.
it's going to be so difficult for me to start at square one in a new thing like that. And
Yeah.
I like doing that with hobbies and hyperfixations, but if I shoot video right now and it doesn't come out looking like a Christopher Nolan movie, I will be genuinely upset about it. And so then I just don't touch it. And I'm so drawn to it. I would love to learn to be a DP or go to film school or
Yeah.
tiptoe into these shows and movies I'm so inspired from, but have no
Hmm.
concept of how to make. And I think it's really cool. It's evidence from your Emmy that diversifying into photo and video was such a good choice, both like not only just financially, but just creatively speaking. You can always
Yeah.
kind of like you learn to play two very, very different instruments. And I think that's
Yes.
really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, like I went from photographer to videographer, and now I'm like full on invested in, becoming a
Yeah.
better video editor. And I don't know what, in 3, 4, 5 years, I don't know what that's going to look like. Hopefully I'm a much better editor than I was today, but I might also be doing a
Yeah.
whole other thing that I'm like fully invested in as well.
Yeah. I'll be really interested to see how the lanes of like, I don't see, obviously, AI is going to encroach into every single thing that exists in our lives, but editing feels like such it almost feels like a tradesman, which is something I was just chatting with a previous guest. She's like, my husband's a construction worker, he makes stuff. AI is
Mm-hmm.
not going to be able to physically make stuff anytime soon. And so similarly, like editing feels like this very hands-on thing.
Yeah.
And while there'll be tools to assist you, I think that unlike the video creation itself, which I do just pessimistically or pragmatically foresee not disappearing but being much smaller, and I think it'll be really cool to see what an editor looks like, an editor job in 5 years looks like for you,
Yeah.
where you're like, oh, I don't need to go look for B-roll. I'm just in Premiere and I type
Yeah.
puppies running through the snow, and I've got B-roll of puppies
Yep.
running through the snow.
Yeah.
And I think that sounds like such a cool tool to jump in. Like right now, it feels like to me, unexperienced at least, you're like primed to be the person to be at the forefront of that change really quickly. Do
Yeah, I mean,
you? Do
even in the
you?
last year, there's been so many changes in AI
Yeah,
and the tools that, I mean, I know AI is like a big thing right now. It's
broad
trending or
statement.
whatever.
Yeah,
But in a lot of the Adobe tools that I've used, AI has kind of existed in there. You
yeah.
just never really, no one ever called it AI or whatever. But like, it's already uh, uh, being used as a tool, and I've
Yeah,
embraced all the changes that they've made. It makes our work easier. It's hard to like
yeah,
think how we were doing things before and like why we would go back and do things that way. So I don't know.
yeah.
I like
I'm
the
I'm really
level.
excited for it. Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think
Yeah.
that I have a little bit of I'm excited for the there's probably a terminology for this, and I'm in tech, so I should know it, but I don't. But the aspect where it's just infused into stuff that already exists. Like on my computer
Yes.
now, I use this app called Raycast, and it's just globally infused to my entire operating system. Now I have an AI chat
Hmm.
accessible, and if I'm in a video project like you're working on, it's just going to be infused in where like a quick cut little pattern on your keyboard, and you've got a very specific thing that you were working for, and
Yeah.
your ability to execute just gets so much
Oh yeah.
better, so much quicker. Like as we talked about at work, like your baseline of good is just going
Yes.
to really elevate, and you're already doing the job really
Yeah.
well. So it's just going to get tremendously better.
And I know there's the argument of like it taking over and doing the work for you, but like that's not how AI works. It needs somebody kind of
No,
like running the machine. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's made me a faster editor. It's made all my processes faster and more efficient, and it's allowed me to focus on things that matter most. Like on my photography stuff, I get to focus more on my photography and worry less about culling. On in videography and editing, I worry less about like pulling clips or putting a podcast together because I can work in multicam. I can have it do a lot of the speed work for me, and then I'm already working on the part that I would have started working on next week because it would have taken me that long to get there. You know what I mean?
right.
We had some technical issues.
technical, you know who's going to fix that? Our editor.
Me, this guy.
Thanks, Ulysses. I love that. I love that we had a glitch on a call that you've got to work
You're like, can you fix that for
on.
me? And also, by the way, I'm going to need this next week.
Yeah, if you can get a quick, we got a tight turnaround on this. Um, this will be such a funny episode. Yeah, I know you shoot a lot of other stuff too with your like kids and family. You seem like someone who, while being a professional creative, also does a really good job of being a hobbyist creative, what's your like camera that you're carrying around with you most days? Like, are you an iPhone guy when you're walking out the house, or are you keeping something with you when you're like hanging out with your kids and
You know,
going and doing
I
stuff?
actually haven't had this conversation with you yet. I've been meaning to tell you, but I've been shooting a ton of film. I've been like on the hunt. Can you hear that? Can you hear the
It's like a
lawnmower?
helicopter lawnmower, just like a little bit.
They showed up
Our
right when
editor
I
will
was
our editor will fix it.
dude.
I am the worst fix it in poster when it's not me fixing it in post.
And I also love that I have to edit this, and the lawn people are here right now, and I'm like, they're ruining. I have to fix my own shit now. Yeah, I've been shooting a lot of film. I picked up a Pentax X7 that I love, but I'm obviously not carrying
Sick.
that everywhere because it's so giant and heavy and ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I've been on the hunt for like smaller and smaller cameras. I finally got my hands on a Canon QL17. I showed it to you.
Oh yeah. That was the one you were messing around with when we were in Palm Springs. That's
I
so cool.
absolutely love that camera. It's been like my go everywhere film camera.
Nice.
And then I know you've been saying you've been wanting to pick up a Ricoh GR3, and
I would love a GR3 and an old Ricoh film. I'd love a Ricoh 35 millimeter too. I think
those are
really cool.
nice.
I'd like
too.
I'd like to replace my Mini Lux with a cheaper. I'd like to get like a $60 Olympus stylus actually, just like a throw.
I wish they were $60, man. They're like everything's shot up. Yeah, now. All those cameras are super expensive.
Just something in that cheap range where like if I dropped, like if I was at a rave at 3 a.m. photographing it, I'm not like worried about it.
Yeah. You're like, I'll check it later, I guess. Or maybe the photo still came
out
cool.
It's like, it's broke, whatever. I won't like, if I break the Mini Lux, I'm like, oh, my day is ruined.
No, we were on the hunt for something small that we can carry with us on vacations and stuff. Cause we take the wedding cameras, but there are workhorses. I don't like taking them out. And then, they're really just not very travel friendly when you think about it, So we picked up a Canon G7X Mark III, and I've been playing with that over the weekend, and the thing is awesome, man. I really love the photos that come out of that thing. Yeah. So that's my
I feel like if I'm not working, I don't want to be carrying gear.
Yeah.
Like I've explained to friends where I'm like, for 10 years, I remember vividly this time in New York, being in New York for like a wedding or an engagement shoot or something, and being on the train back and forth with all my stuff, and then getting back to the Airbnb, dumping it, and then going back out, and this freedom of like, I never get to just run around a city without a bag. This is so freeing and nice. And that I mean, we've talked about, I have a few Leicas now, and it's even hard pressed for me to be like, yeah, I guess I'll bring a camera today. I like not bringing a camera anywhere.
Yeah. And I got a 3-year-old who's running around and stuff, and it sucks. It really sucks to like run around with a camera strapped to your side where you're trying to pick him up, or just trying to run with them in general. So it has been super refreshing, just like having this camera that goes in my pocket and I don't really have to think about it, So
I think the pocketable camera is king. Like if I can get something that literally goes in my pocket like a phone, but isn't a phone, because the truth is, like, I mean, I like my iPhone, it's fine, but it is not a real camera. And I think we were all sold years ago that the phone was going to be like the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it's fine, it does its job, but I like having a camera.
I had the same thought. Like, for the longest time, I was like, your iPhone is like this perfect compact camera that's in your pocket. But after seeing the photos that I'm getting from my G7X, like, there's no comparison. You know what I mean? Like, it's got.
I'm actually really stoked to see digital point and shoots kind of making their way back, because I worked at Best Buy selling those cameras. Those Canon Power Shots are sick. That's a great. It's like anywhere between 12 and 20 megapixels. Those are great cameras. I'm glad they're coming back in the fold. I think they are supremely better than an iPhone, and it's not even my generation, Gen Zers and stuff, but like, I'm stoked that they're using that camera to photograph like their day-to-day stuff, because it's going to be way better later on.
It'd be interesting to see photographers in the near future like shooting whole weddings with just these pocket cameras.
Oh man, I thought about for a while I thought about doing like a $500 deal where it was like, for $500 someone will come, like, I'll have a second shooter just like iPhone the day, but that feels like just a content creator now.
Yeah.
which they're going to be charging more for that. But it'll be interesting to see like where they go, because
Yeah.
my my photos like for my entire 20s exist on Facebook. Like
Hmm.
at some point I need to actually go in and like download all those to have them and organize them in a way that makes sense. But if I'm 20 right now and I'm photographing stuff on my point and shoot, and then maybe it's making its way to like an Instagram reel or a TikTok or something like that, but like what's the future like for 5 or 10 years from now when they want to like dip back into their archives and actually
Yeah.
like look at their photos from they were
Yeah.
21 or whatever? I'd be interested to see what that looks like.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what that's going to
Yeah.
look like.
Yeah. What's the key question? What's your problem? What are you working on right now? Kind of sounds like everything's going smooth as butter.
Yeah, things are good, but I am always thinking of what's next. I don't like getting too comfortable either. So I guess my problem is just trying to figure out what to do next, where to take my career. I told you I'm shooting a lot of film. I've always been a hobbyist with film, but more recently I've been shooting a lot of film, and I'm trying to figure out what what avenue to put that in. Like I started adding it to like my weddings, and started shooting film at weddings, and I kind of like that, but I don't know if like that's totally what I want to dive into. And I started shooting at my friend's studio. I know you do some studio work, and that's been kind of fun. So I think I'm just in the middle of like trying to figure out where to put film photography, or what to do with my photography in general, what to do next. I'm not going to stop shooting weddings, so I'm always trying to figure out, how to become a better wedding photographer, and not just
Yeah.
become the old guy that shoots weddings. That's another fear of
I mean, I
mine.
think if you're, yeah, I mean, I fear my thing was like, how long can I be the cool photographer that
Yeah,
like 28-year-olds want to book? But I think that like as a wedding photographer or a videographer too, you're like often dropped into a room that's a canvas you didn't have any control over,
hmm
and so getting studio space as any level of photographer. Actually, this is something I should like push on my general public voice. I think that like any level of photographer should book studio time
yeah,
whenever possible, because you're now given this blank canvas to do whatever you want in, and oftentimes like I don't even know that I what I want to do. I
yeah.
didn't even know that I wanted to do something different. When given full control, it's like, well, what do I go do now? It's like, what are you shooting in studio stuff right now?
Um, I'm really just trying to get some friends to go in there and shoot some stuff. I shoot what's it called? I do headshots all the time, so I've been doing a couple headshots. But again, that feels too. It doesn't feel like I'm doing anything super creative. But you're right. Like I go in there and it makes me. I would just do headshots outdoors usually because I'm an environmental photographer. But I do know how to work with lights, so it has me questioning. What I'm doing in the studio, and how much more I can do. So I'm trying to figure that out. I'd like to do some more uh, shoots with couples in the studio because that's something I've just never really done, and I feel like
I don't think I have either. Maybe once or twice by some fluke or something like that. But yeah, I feel like when I've seen couples photos
yeah,
in studio work, it's such a different kind of it's a different kind of creation,
yeah,
and I think they're really cool, and I don't see it too often.
yeah. I feel like I could do something fun with that because I always say I'm putting myself out there. I'm trying to do some shoots in studio, kind of like the way you do, like some more editorial style shoots. Um, but I've always struggled with having one person in front of my camera. Like I always end up with a good photo, but during the session, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to pose one person. But you add one more person in there. I mean, that's been my entire career. So I feel like I want to throw some couples in the studio and see what I can make out of that. That'd be really fun.
Yeah, I definitely for the longest time, like the first, I don't know, 20 or 30 people I photographed that were models were actually just friends of mine I
Hmm.
convinced to go take photos. And I remember the first time I had an actual model in front of my camera, and it was such a different experience, and I realized there's like a whole job I didn't have to do anymore.
Yeah.
And so I've personally never worked with like a makeup artist and stylist and all this, some and a lighting tech or anything. At some point that'd be great because it'd go same philosophy that one less job I have to do, one less job I have
Yes.
to do, and then I
Yeah.
can just focus on taking photos. And so for me, like having one person in front of me that's a model that's like a professional at it is such a cool experience.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had the opportunity to have two professional models at the same time in front of me to work with that.
Yeah.
So the couple times that I have worked with two people, it's almost like falling back to uh, amateurs, for lack of a better word, but just like amateur models. People
Sure.
are
Yeah.
just like people, they're just friends. And I go, oh, this is hard again. I don't
Yeah.
like this. So I'd be pretty intrigued to see what you end up doing with like
Yeah.
if you start leaning into. I don't know that I always have trouble identifying like what or titling what kind of work I do, but we'll call it editorial. But like, be interested to see what you start doing as an edit. Like, you're already doing great video. You're an Emmy winner, and you're already doing great photo. And now you're like dipping into a totally different space and like working with
Yeah.
professionals or couples or whatever that might look like. I think it'd be really cool to just like kind of stretch those muscles.
That might be a goal of mine actually, to get to work with like a professional model, because you're right, like just like with any job, like I know what it takes to do like a magazine shoot. Like it requires an entire production, just like in film. So maybe I'll make that one of my goals, is to work with a professional model to see what that's actually
Yeah,
like.
it's funny because it's even just the simple thing of like a really good model knows where the light's coming from. They know to move
Mhm.
in between clicks. If I work with a model that I know really well, I can go, hey, we're working with a different kind of camera today. It's all
Mhm.
manual focus. It's a little different. And I can kind of walk them through that and I can see their brain gears turning and going, okay, all right. And like processing it differently. And man, I think, and it's personally speaking, and obviously publicly too, like I think finding models is so easy. I think I have a copy pasted thing I send to like people all the time on Instagram. And for every 10 I reach out to, one gets back to me, and every 10 of those, one actually, makes time. But to work with pros who just like, if you're a good photographer and you're a cool person, they want to work with you. They want to make stuff.
Yeah.
And it seems it's a really accessible way to go like get that creative itch kind of
Yeah.
scratched really
Yeah.
quickly.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to dive into that world and see what I can make out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm stoked to see what you make. And now that you've got this little new camera, I'm stoked to see like what you get on the kind of day to day with the kids and the fam and stuff too.
Oh yeah, yeah. That thing is pretty fun, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. Man, thanks so much for taking the time today to chat. I know we get to chat every week, but I really appreciate it taking the time for this. This has been great. Um, and yeah, it's just awesome to hear about a photographer who's like, you've really done an incredible job of being a diverse career. Like you said, you're a diverse career who has found both like the good balance of sustainability while maintaining like a really accessible creativity lane and not feeling like you're stifled or anything like that, which is really admirable. And I think a lot of photographers are trying to seek the same thing that you've got going on right now.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah.